Hello class, I hope you're all doing well. Today we will be learning about the roles of women and African Americans in World War II. The goal of this lesson is to understand the roles that women and African Americans played in World War II and if those roles were equal to their counterparts. We will start with a KWLS chart. Fill in what you know about women and African Americans in World War II and what you want to know about these groups. We will be turning these in class tomorrow, so be sure to take notes. I will give you a few seconds now to write down what you need to, but if you need more time, feel free to pause the video. We will start with women in World War II. I want you to look at the following advertisements and think about the roles that women were expected to play. Were women on equal terms with men? And what do you find interesting about these women? The first ad is to encourage women to save fats and grease to help pass on ammunition to the boys overseas. The second ad is to get women involved with the medical field to work with wounded soldiers. The third ad shows a military man thanking a man and woman for service. The fourth ad shows a woman wishing she were a man so she could join the Navy and serve her country. The fifth ad shows a woman growing a victory garden. The last ad is encouraging women to get a job instead of longing for someone overseas. Feel free to take a moment and write down what you thought about those ads. Many of us have seen the iconic ad for Rosie the Riveter. What do you notice about Rosie the Riveter? Does she look like she has been working? Is she a typical female worker in the workforce? Why is she pictured in this way? Please feel free to pause and take some notes on that. We will now look at some statistics on women in World War II. As we look, is there anything you find interesting about these stats? Did they surprise you in any way? Does it seem like women are equal in the workforce? This bar graph shows a percentage of women in different fields, such as the iron and steel field and the auto industry. Each bar represents a different year. I will give you a few seconds to look, and if you need more time, feel free to pause and answer the earlier questions. This next bar graph simply shows the percentage of women who are of age to work, who are actually working. This is over the years of 1930 to 1950. We see there's a steady increase in those 20 years. This last bar graph shows the number of females in the labor force from 1900 to 1960. The graph also separates it between married and single women. Again, feel free to pause to really look at the data. Now let's look at African Americans in World War II. Do you know of any African American groups that fought in World War II? And were they treated in the same way everywhere? Now I want to pass off some learning to you. Keep in mind the questions from earlier and find one group of African Americans who fought in World War II. Take notes on their accomplishments, how were they treated abroad and at home, and why did they choose to fight in World War II? We will have a think, pair, share on this tomorrow, so be sure to take notes. We will also be having a think, pair, share on how women and African Americans were treated in World War II and were the groups treated fairly. Please have some notes ready for this and rewatch the video if you need a refresher on any information. We will also be having a large group discussion. You may want to have some notes on the following questions. Would the war have been different if women and African Americans had been treated differently? How and why? If the war was fought today, how would it have been different? Finally, finish up your KWLS writing. Please write at least 3 new things you learned under L and at least one thing you still want to learn about women and African Americans in World War II. Again, that will be turned in tomorrow. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in class tomorrow.